guys, welcome back to Hybryd Gaming. This is Rodamir with a review of a game that the American public decided to sweep under the carpet. The game I'll be reviewing is a PS2 exclusive called Bujingai, Forsaken City. Japanese companies Taito and Red Entertainment were in charge of making the game. The company BAM Entertainment was in charge of the North American release. For those of you who don't know, Taito is a huge gaming corporation that has been swinging around its influence in the video game industry since the 8-bit era. They have a decent track record, and they are wholly owned by Square Enix. Bujingai was huge in Japan, selling over 400,000 copies nationwide, and often being positively compared to AAA titles like Devil May Cry and Ninja Gaiden. But, as it seems, North America didn't appreciate this title the way Japan did, even with above-average ratings and good reviews. But the bar for them hasn't been set high in the States since the release of Space Invaders. Red Entertainment is another Japanese company, and I honestly could care less about them, but at least we know they make good games. BAM, on the other hand, is essentially dead and has canceled more games than its release. The game starts with a man traveling through space as a shooting star before abruptly colliding onto an island. After this makeup-wearing protagonist shows off some fancy dance move, the game establishes that he has lived longer than most nations and clearly has more powers than Superman. But make no mistake, according to the game's later plot, he's just a mere human. Okay, let's get the ugly out of the way first. The story sucks, and it's full of plot holes. The cutscene animations are reminiscent of Kung Pao, and Lao's jumping animations in the cutscenes are just awful. The way they rendered each cut between takes in the cutscenes looks as if they redid the entire animation between takes. Also, this chick and cliché love interest is very clearly in charge of these portals, the key tools to traveling to new levels. But later in the game, she gets abducted by the main villain, and somehow Lao can still use the portals without the help of the girl in the blue. The tutorials at the beginning of the game are actually a series of crappy videos with cheesy voiceovers, and they take too freaking long to watch. Despite the lacking pre-rendered animations, the in-game graphics and animations artistically rival that of modern games. The combat is fluid, and the more you spam the attack button, the more invested Lao becomes in his attack, making button mashers vulnerable to defeat. The difficulty curve starts shallow, but escalates accordingly as the player finds new spells and buys upgrades. Each level is visually different and introduces new enemies in situations where they can't perform at their best. So later, the player won't have room to complain when the exact same enemy gets the jump on them because it moved from a small corridor to a wide room. Visual cues highlight pads, and gameplay elements are introduced mid-game without interrupting the flow of combat. Just watch what happens when I get wrecked trying to get this new spell.
Have you remembered nothing? You can reflect the water the same way you can reflect a magic spell. Have faith in yourself, face the water, and concentrate. Yes, that's it. You can do it.
The bosses are challenging and somewhat unique, provided it's a new boss. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are some questionable and probably bad decisions in this game, such as crappy prerequisites to move on to the next part of the level, and duplicate bosses with more health. But the game's pros clearly outweigh the cons. Just imagine the game's story as self-aware and look up walkthroughs for some of the more confusing puzzles, and it's essentially flawless. The music was described as a fusion of traditional Chinese instruments and metal influences, and hey, I can't complain. In the abrupt beginning of the game, a song suddenly strikes the player with an upbeat rhythm, making combat seem almost too appropriate. The soundtrack fits the mood and vibe of every stage and intended situation depicted in the cutscenes. Remember, intended. I invite anyone who liked the Devil May Cry series to go and buy a used copy of Bujingai and plug it into their PS2 as soon as possible. There's almost as many PS2s in circulations than PS3s and 360s combined, so don't say you can't find a working PS2. The game's dynamic combat and 2 difficulty settings make it perfect for hardcore gamers and casual visitors alike, and the story makes for a good laugh for those with an eye for lazy storytelling. Visual styles, along with a variety of spells and ways to fight enemies, make this game stand up on its own against competitors. Well wait, you say confused. If the game did so well in Japan, why haven't they made a sequel to Bujingai? I couldn't answer the question even if I tried. Title promised a sequel as long as fan support remained energized, which it did. Apparently, the higher-ups didn't take advantage of this and decided to move on to new games, baffling everyone. In 2007, they announced that they planned to make an MMO based on the game, but that fell through too. I implore any fans of the game to make annoying complaint videos directed to that insane group of Japanese people who refuse to show us news of a sequel to an amazing game. That's all the time I care to dedicate to making this video, so like and comment if you want to see more or have suggestions. And perhaps if you make enough noise, I might convince one of our other 2 Hybryd gamers to play this blind for you guys.